I'm standing between you and lunch, I think, or shortly there will be lunch. So, and you just came back from a break, so I hope you're all invigorated and excited to learn. As excited as I am to be here. So this is actually my second time at the Email Insider Summit. I was here in 2012, which seems like so long ago. When I checked in last night, they said, we had you here in 2012. I was like, oh, wow, that was a really long time ago. And it was fun to listen to Caesars talk because I used to work for a lot of the different Caesars Entertainment properties and MGM and those properties. And now I don't get to gamble when I go into work. So we're going to talk about something else. So St. Kate, worked for Marcus Hotels and Resorts, 21 hotels and resorts, 50 restaurants. We're the 4th largest movie theater company in the world. And today we're talking about St. Kate. St. Kate is the arts hotel. St. Kate is the only hotel like this in the United States. And we're going to talk about how we personalize that. So what is St. Kate? St. Kate, I was brought in a little over 2 years ago to build this hotel. I handle all things marketing. I grew up in the digital space, though. I grew up in the email space, the data space, and now I get to touch all different types of things. We studied 55 different hotels in the US, all art-themed hotels, to look at what we liked, what we didn't like, and what we found was that there was a need for a hotel concept that celebrates all arts, right? It's a place, you can lay your head at any hotel. You can go sleep in any hotel room anywhere, but you want an experience. When we talk about email, when we talk about data, that's an experience. And the hotel should feel the same. So what we decided is to build St. Kate, a muse of St. Catherine. Our muse was St. Catherine, the patron saint of arts. St. Kate is St. Catherine's, let's say, like badass older sister. And not the crazy aunt, not the crazy art aunt, the badass older sister. She celebrates all art forms. We built a theater, a 95-seat black box theater in our hotel. We have 4 different galleries in our hotel. We have a maker space. We have an artist in residence. As you can see, one of our hotel rooms there, it's appropriately named the Leopard Room. And the Leopard Room was created by Lon Michaels, an artist. We have 5 artist rooms where partial proceeds go back to nonprofits as well. And we are there to help build in the creative process. So it's first of its kind, it's different, so everything needs to be different. We don't like to do anything like it's been done before. And so we partnered with a museum. We have Museum of Wisconsin Art. This is based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. New York Times calls it a one of a kind. Chicago Tribune calls it the only hotel like it. Right now on USA Today's top hotels that you need to check out, we're #1. So if you haven't been there and you like the cold, because we're all here, you should come to Milwaukee and enjoy the cold as well. But what do? We didn't want to do anything like we normally do. And art is scary. Art is intimidating. I can tell you firsthand, I went to the Art Hotel in Denver, and there was a giant red circle on the wall. And I was like, cool, a giant red circle. I don't care, like, whatever. And my boss, Greg Marcus of the Marcus Corporation, was like, Erin, that is a $2 million blah, blah, blah. And I was like, huh, I think I should be an artist. I could do a giant red circle on the wall. That seems, I mean, it literally was a painted giant red circle. Now, I'm not trying to offend anyone. I don't need a letter or like, don't tweet like, oh, she doesn't understand art. How'd she do this? But art is subjective. Art is different. And because of that, it's very personal. And it's a hurdle. How many times do you go into a museum and you're like, I really want to learn about this? And next to art, there's a little card. It's called a didactic. Didn't know that until we started this project. And on that didactic that you have to squint down to look at, you can read maybe when the author was born or the painter was born, maybe when they died. Sometimes they say when he painted it. You don't really know, right? And sometimes it gives you a story. Sometimes the story is relevant to you. Sometimes it's not. So what do you do with that? We need to overcome that obstacle. We need to make it so people don't walk in and go, oh, okay, cool, art, leave. We want them to experience it. So we had this idea. We have an in-house creative design team called Gradient that I oversee as well. We have this idea that what if we created a tour of the art? Now, most museums you go into, they hand you the big headset, right? If you go to the Statue of Liberty, big headset, big lanyard, hangs on there, you can push a button, very cumbersome. Well, that's not great. So we wanted something a little more simplistic, a little easier. Why not build an app? So we had a Pfister app Pfister is a 125-year-old historic hotel, also in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And if you haven't been there, it's the 5-star luxury hotel of Milwaukee, so you can't miss it. And we built an app there we have the world's largest hotel Victorian art collection there. So we wanted people to go through that. Now, to be fair, Pfister also, demo, 60-year-old plus, looking at that art collection, not as excited about downloading the app as we knew the St. Kate customer would be. So what did we do? We needed to build something. We needed to enhance it. We needed to make it so people wanted to touch it, feel it, learn about it. Now, we had to build a CMS. We had to build the architecture. We had to build an API base. And it turns out art doesn't stay the same. It changes. So we couldn't just build it and let it go like we all like to do with all technology. We had to build something that was able to change and to be touched and easy to update, because the last thing you want to do is have to go to an IT person and go, can we update the app? We put in a new artist, and then we'd get put into a queue, and it turned out we would never be a priority because IT never thinks we're a priority, even though we're obviously the most important people, and we make the most money. So with that said, we had to build a backend, a CMS that was easy to understand. And it turns out, I don't know if you know this, artists aren't easy to work with. They're not. So artists work on their own time, and they're very particular. It's interesting. Frazee was just up here talking about language. They're very particular about how you talk about their art, what words you use. And it could be something little like an and versus a the, and they'll be like, no. It changes the context. It changes the phrase. It changes the word. It changes the language. So we needed something that was easy to update and that our curator, who we had hired, could also update. So we built our own CMS that we could update exhibits. We could update different collections. We have a 150-piece art collection that we own, but then we have rotating artists internationally and nationally coming in to work with us, and we need to be able to quickly get that launched, which brought us to the Art Tour app. So what can we do with the Art Tour app? You can take your self-guided tour. You can view each piece, which is grouped by a collection. You can read about the artist's work, all that stuff that you might have been able to get off of the didactic, which you didn't want to be the weirdo standing in front of the piece of art this close. Like, I can tell you, I go to the art museum all the time, only because my kids go there and it's something to do with my kids so that I don't have to like really watch them. And we go and look at the art, and this is how we look at the art. We're like, oh, that was cool. Right? I'm never going to be the person saying like this, but if there's an art tour and an art tour that talks to the type of person I am, much more excited about doing it. And then we added an audio tour because what we want is for you to experience the art, not the app. We want this to be frictionless, and yes, I use the word frictionless. Later I'll use omni-channel and big data just for the fun of it. But we want it to be frictionless because we don't want people to have to worry about like, oh, where am I in the app? Where are we at? We had to talk about beacons. How do we know where people are? But guess what? As we're going through this, we realized we're getting a lot of data. We're getting a lot of information about what people are engaging in, what they like, what they stop on, which led us to building it out even further and being able to look at like, what do people like? If you're interested in like a red circle on the wall, I'm not, but someone is. Or if you're interested in more of the contemporary art or the controversial art. And that was a big deal too. Controversial art in a hotel was a big challenge because should I put it in there? Should I not put it in there? Where can I find it? And how can we bring people and the story to people? Because there is a story behind every piece of art there. We have an exhibit right now where it's called, I believe it's called Sleepless. And this photographer took a picture of every bed he slept in for the past 30 years. And I thought, that's commitment. Because 30 years ago, he had to go, you know what? Someday, I'm going to do an exhibit. So I'm going to start now taking a picture of all these different types of beds. But to him, that's really important. That's really exciting. And that's exciting to some of you. Some of you are like, oh, that's interesting. I could do that. Go home, take a picture of your bed, and we'll see where you're at in 30 years. So we have to market the app. We have to get people to download it in order to get this data. So we added it to our pre-arrival email, our web and digital marketing, our point of check-in, right? We had to get the front desk excited to talk about the app. We had to create an overcoming the hurdle. Do we give them something if they download the app? Because guess what? I'm taking all their data. I'm taking everything they're doing on this app in and trying to figure it out. And then being able to update them on when new collections, when interesting things happen, and creating the collateral. So it's a full 360 look at how we're getting people involved in this. But as we've said, art is subjective. It is personal. And we're talking about personalization. So what better place to start than with something that I don't know if you guys saw, Banksy did a piece of art this weekend. It's a white wall, and he duct taped a banana to it. And someone went and ate the banana. I think I would have done that, because it's an effing banana taped to a wall. But that's art, and it's probably cost a shit ton of money, I don't know. So it's personal. So how do we talk about that? Different types of art, it means something to different people, right? I'm not a huge, like Picasso's cool, right? We learned about it in school. I think I could have probably done this too, but I don't know. Banksy at the top there, you have interactive art, places where people can play and get involved, and they want to know where they can go to do that, and it's fun, and it starts to teach the younger generation. So because of that, we have to talk about the power of personalization, and what better place for it to come alive. So our app's only 6 months old. This is relatively new. We are still testing, and that's one thing I've heard here a lot, is how much we're testing everything. I love TransUnion. She goes, now I just use it back to the CEO. I'm just like, yeah, we can test it. And that, I think we should all do that. We should be like, okay, we'll test it and just add it to the list, right? But we're testing everything. So we have to create we know we have to create a better search tool within the app. We're doing AR technology in the app. Lenses is the most personalized piece of it, which is, if you're a kid, you want to learn about the fun kid stuff and the kid art that's in the hotel. If you seem to interact more with contemporary art versus historical art, being able to share when those things come online, being able to email you with that information is really important, and all that data is connected, right? You give your email. We get your email when you download the app. We have that. We have your text when you check into the hotel. We get your cell phone and we start texting you. So by tying all of this together, we're able to truly communicate with someone. Now, when I have an exhibit come to town that is contemporary, I know exactly who's going to want to come to that opening. I know who exactly is going to want to put on social media that they checked it out first and foremost, because guess what? Everybody likes to be the first person to see something and say something. That's why the guy ate the banana. Beacon technology, knowing where you're at, right? I'm on a video tour, and it says, like, now you're looking at X woman art piece. And you're like, no, that's dogs playing poker. I think I'm in the wrong spot. So being able to take the beacon technology and know exactly where you're standing, and make sure that if you moved, that the audio tour catches up with you, and then cater to their interests. And so sometimes what people say and what people do are very different. We all know that, right? A long time ago, I was talking to someone who said they gave everybody a preference sheet, and they would mark all their preferences on it, and then they'd go watch their web behavior, and they found out what someone was doing and what someone was saying was very different. Turns out in Vegas, it's very much like that too. I came from Vegas. I spent 10 years working in Vegas. What someone will tell me to my face that they like to do and what someone actually does turns out to be different. And it's really important that your host knows that about you. That's why when we looked at the night, when we looked at the books and how many cash-paying guests we had, still important to know what they do, even though they don't want us to know what they do, right? Because that's how we made sure they enjoyed it there. So same idea. We cater to their interests based on what they're interacting with, what they're touching, what we've seen them walk by. And it's a full funnel, because they have to come in and know, they have to have heard about the app, want to download the app, get through, interact with the app, and then we're finally able to really personalize the journey for them. But it's that hurdle and obstacle to get there. So that's where we're at. Like I said, it's 6 months old. Our hotel in June will come up on its year anniversary for an 85-year-old company, and we are really excited to keep exploring and keep building this. But with that, that's it.
We have time for questions for Erin.
I did such a good job, nobody wants to ask a question.
Are you creating personas off of this data? Or how are you, tell us a little bit about the kinds of segmentation that you're doing off of the data.
Yep, so we started by bucketing, right? Not personalization, but really segmentation of saying, we think they're gonna like this. We think if with the lenses, there's gonna be a kid theme. We think there's gonna be a contemporary thing. We think there's gonna be a historical theme. And then we overlay what actually happens with it. And what that has allowed is similar to Chris Jenner's about the content blocks and just pulling in the right thing. It's all an algorithm. Being able to say, all right, we definitely saw that they liked the kids, and they did this, this, and this. It starts to tell us. Some of it at the very forefront was very manual. Our goal is to get it very all automative, but the only way to do that is to truly understand the algorithms that we're building.
What are you learning about your guests from this that you didn't know before in terms of not only their tastes in art, but the ways in which they're interacting and things they might want that you hadn't anticipated?
So some of the basic things we learned very quickly were that we had to optimize the front page of the app once people got in there, and we had to create more of a tutorial because people would start to play with it and then they'd log out. So we had to teach them, we had to do a better job teaching them on the forefront. The other thing we learned is that while women were the most outspoken about using the app, and they were very obvious, they were using it in groups, which I thought was interesting because I was like, oh, it's a self-guided tour, you're gonna be alone with your earbuds in, but they were using it in groups. Men were using it as well, they just weren't as maybe flamboyant about the fact that they were using it. So we were able to see that through the data that we were getting through to different demos. If we only went off of what we saw with our eyes, we would have assumed it skewed only female, and we would have assumed it only skewed middle-aged female because they were the most vocal.
How are you so this is still, so we're talking about a very small sample set. Number of people in the hotel downloading the app. How are you extrapolating from that, the data that you're getting there, to talk to people outside of the app? In terms of how is it informing and changing your customer acquisition strategy, both in email and elsewhere? And how is it informing the ways in which you're communicating with all of the rest of your guests who are not using the app?
So a couple different ways. One, it is a small sample set right now just because we're still startup mode with it. But it changes the way you talk, because when we first started, we talked about, hey, download the Syncade app. And we started shifting that because app sounded scary to people, as weird as it is. It doesn't sound scary to us in this room because we're all app users. But to the typical middle-aged demographic, download this app was like, no, I'm good. Like, that's why McDonald's still had a minute, like they had to ramp up their app downloads because it was like, no, I don't need your app, it's fine. So we had to call it the art tour. And we had to start calling it different things in our marketing materials, in our acquiring guest campaign. The other thing too is understanding that different strokes for different folks, right? So making sure that everybody understands why they're coming into the hotel. And we have 3 restaurants and 2 bars. We have Milwaukee's only champagne bar. We have a speakeasy steakhouse. We have 4 galleries. We have a theater complex. And so people are walking in that door for many different reasons. And the great thing is once they downloaded the app, I know every time they walk through that door, and I'm able to count that. Now I would love that for all of our items, and we're looking at expanding that. But that also changes how you acquire customers based on what they're doing in the app and what we're able to pull out of that.
Yeah, what are some examples of that? What are some of the things you're discovering that you're able to apply on the acquisition side?
So with the female versus male, we found different ways of talking to folks. If we know that, for this instance, like if we're talking about people who are interested in contemporary art, that has changed how we led some of our emails about art. If we're talking about art talkbacks, we got some feedback through the app that people really enjoy art talkbacks. I didn't know that they would like that. So that changed what our email marketing communications were focused on at the very top. It talked about, hey, join us for this art talkback, and then the artist would pull out their art tour app during the process and talk about like, hey, you can also find my information in here. So again, came full circle. Some of the other ones would be the age breakdown. So it also taught us, like we saw, younger demographic, more contemporary art, definitely were more eager to explore the art throughout the entire hotel. We found that the older demographic, and it doesn't, I'm not trying to bucket people young and old, but that's how we ended up doing it. The older demographic weren't as anticipatory to go to the second floor and the third floor of art without being encouraged. And so for us, it was really important to then take that back into marketing and say, hey, guess what? Did you check out our second floor? This is what you will find. Or check out our third floor. Or if you go all the way to the 10th floor, you'll see this, because there is art all the way through the hotel. But again, it's just because we found that young, and there are studies on this, but the younger demo was more apt and more likely to explore, to just say, worst thing that can happen, someone will ask me to leave. I'll walk up these stairs. And what it taught us is we needed to proactively tell people, hey, come up these stairs. And that was a really interesting insight that we were able to take back, because we work there every day. So we take it for granted that people would just naturally roam around the building. But it turns out they don't.
Erin Levzow, this is fantastic.